Well, I do apologise for the slightly slow and broken start to this evening's streaming action, but it looks like things are back underway and ready to go as they should be. Here we are then on the grid, ready for race 1 here at Imola. If you did miss that in all the commotion, we're here at Imola for round 10 of the AROC Racing League's former Alfa Championship. Just under 30 seconds to go now until it is lights out. It's Andrew Whitehead, Steve Knight and Matt Daly, our 3-car grid for this racing action. In the background you can see an Alfa 75, which was on track in qualifying as well. That was a bit of fun. Not sure it's going to be a mainstay feature, but we might see it happen once or twice every now and again. Either way, the main feature of this evening's action is about to get underway. As the revs begin to rise, the drivers are ready to go. It's 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 1 here at Imola. A slow start for Andrew Whitehead is the big headline from this lap 1 so far, as it's an immense start for Steve Knight there and Matt Daly. Matt Daly goes from 3rd into 1st. Steve Knight defending the inside into Tamburello. Can we see a Max Verstappen style move from Andrew Whitehead? We don't just yet. He thinks better of it, and is just poised and is going to wait for his opportunity to overtake. Side by side then we go. It is Steve Knight and Andrew Whitehead as we head up towards the I was about to say the Cirque de Gilles Villeneuve. No, it's just the Variante Villeneuve there. As we head through into Tosa in just a moment. Matt Daly leads the charge ahead of Andrew Whitehead and Steve Knight. Steve Knight probably a little bit, well, bemused by the sight of the Alfa 75 that was present with him on the circuit at various points just a few minutes ago. And there we have a bit of an off for Steve Knight, actually head through Piratella there. We're going to drop down into Acqua Minerale in just a moment. But that is not an ideal start for Steve Knight. A very ideal start, though, for Matt Daly, who's pretty much walked away with it already this early on in proceedings. He got a 2-second gap to the car behind, that car being Andrew Whitehead, as we head with Variante Alta now. Ride those sausage curbs. You may have seen a brief slideshow of the 75 doing that as we headed down towards the Ravatas in just a moment. First Ravata coming up then. It's that apex, run as wide as possible for you, get the car rotated left hand for the start-finish straight once again, and it must be said, Andrew Whitehead closing up that gap substantially through the 3rd sector of the lap as we jump back onto that start-finish straight. It's a not so straight here, but I'm sure we're going to see an immense 3rd sector time from Andrew Whitehead, and we do a 38.1, obviously going purple, 7/10 faster in just one sector than Matt Daly. So Matt Daly looking comfortable early on, but Andrew Whitehead certainly bringing that fight just as he is in the championship. We're going to have a look at the championship at various points throughout this evening's running, because it's certainly shaping up to be an interesting one. It has been for both the championships this year, actually. They always run down to the wire, but this one in particular, we are separated by just 3 points between Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly at the moment, separated by just 8/10 out on track as well, so it's looking very close indeed. Steve Knight looking like he's having a couple more issues. They're heading into Tosa, of course, on the exit of Tosa, where I came across Steve Knight pointing the wrong direction, the Alfa 75 nearly finding a way to make a hybrid pretty much with a Formula Alpha. Luckily, we avoided that one. Steve Knight then dropping into the pits there. So hopefully we'll see him back in the racing action. We do. He is going to repair the car and get back out on track, so he'll be a little further behind, but he'll still score enough points to take away a podium, of course. Only 3 cars competing in this evening's running, so we will score rather well from this race evening, even if he is finishing in P3. He's just going to get that car home. Less than a second, though, separating our 2 race leaders, our 2 rivals in the championship. As I mentioned just a moment ago, 335 points to Matt Daly, 332 to Andrew Whitehead. It is 335 to Andrew Whitehead, 332 to Matt Daly. It is so close in the championship standings, and it's close out on track as well. As it stands, Andrew Whitehead will lose the leader of the championship to Matt Daly if this race finishes the way that it's currently shaping up to be. I am sure Andrew will be kicking himself for that race start here at Imola, as we see. Just look at how much he's putting through that car, heading through Tamburello there, pounding over those curbs, barely scrubbing off any speed at all, seemingly, as we run up through to Villeneuve in just a moment. There, everyone on the medium tyres this evening, and both drivers following each other through into the gravel there as we head up towards Tosa. That is I mean, at least you've both done it, I suppose. It could be much worse. It could be a case where only one driver does it, and we soon see the tides turn in this race through misfortune, but that won't be the case, and we are going to carry on here this evening with both drivers still maintaining a fairly consistent gap. Through Variante Alta once more, 1.9 seconds is the gap between the two, but this is where we saw on the very first lap of this race, this was where Andrew Whitehead closed up the delta between the two drivers and was able to make massive inroads, massive dents really, towards Matt Daly's lead in this race. 1.6 seconds is the current gap between the two drivers. Let's see what Andrew Whitehead can whittle that down to now as we head onto the start-finish straight. 1.5 seconds it now stands at. 1.4, it looks to be that Whitehead got a fairly good run out of the second Ravata there and might be benefiting from a slightly faster car in straight line, I want to say. It looks to be through Sector 3 where he gets really high speeds at this circuit. Of course, aside from heading into Tamburello. Looks to be that that's where this car seems to be excelling at the moment, so it could be a difference in setup there. I should mention Andrew Whitehead, 3 weeks out of the car, so he's jumped straight back into the action, so great to see him back. But he might be a little bit rusty as a result, although he's very skilled, and he's certainly less rusty than myself. You know what, I'm secretly quite glad that you weren't able to fully see the driving on offer, shall we say, from Reeve, both commentating and qualifying, because it wasn't particularly pretty. It was, I mean, I didn't spin or anything like that. I think I had traction control on those, so that makes that easy, but many missed apexes. Half my brain was focused on commentating, the other half was focused on trying to fix the stream, and then there's another half somewhere trying to get the stream set up, and then there's probably about 10% of the pea-sized brain trying to actually drive the car. So it was not a good combination. As we head through Acque Minerale now, 1.3 seconds is the gap between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead running up the hill. Famous 80s music video to be inserted there. Copyright word an issue on YouTube. We head through Variante Alta once more. Andrew Whitehead really on a charge at the moment. These two not wheel to wheel, not elbows out battling, but pressuring each other and showing that they have ultimate racecraft really as we head into the mid-phase of this race. Jumping into that first Ravata once again then, perfectly executed there by Matt Daly. Even more brave by Andrew Whitehead. We head through that final corner and jump back onto the start-finish straight. 1.1 seconds is that margin down. It creeps down lap by lap. Andrew Whitehead seemingly has the pace at the moment to bring a charge to Matt Daly, to tell Matt Daly, I'm going to continue fighting for this championship lead, this championship win, and what a win it would be to return on, to win on his returning year, in effect, returning 12 months into Formula Alpha action. If Andrew Whitehead can take away the crown, that would be thoroughly deserved, I think, as we now stand at less than 1 second. If this were Formula 1, it would be DRS zones now at the ready, but we don't need DRS to overtake here in the Formula Alpha Championship as we run through the right-hander once again up towards Tosa. 8 tenths is that margin. Purple sector 1 there for Andrew Whitehead through the first part of this lap. 8 tenths, make that 7 tenths. You will benefit from a little bit of a slipstream the closer you get to Matt Daly. And that will just aid him a little bit more in closing up. I mean, the counterpoint to that is, as we've just demonstrated, you will lose some downforce. A few points of downforce there means that you might find yourself on the outside of the two white lines that designate where the circuit starts and where the circuit ends. And that looks to be the case for Andrew Whitehead, absolutely flying along through Sector 1 that time around, losing out massively, though, through the middle sector. In fact, both drivers actually losing time through that middle sector. I wonder if 10 minutes into this race now, are these tyres beginning to just drop off ever so slightly, starting to no longer offer the same amount of grip that they were able to early on? We'll see if that is the case, but once again, Andrew Whitehead, I feared that he might be dropping off ever so slightly after that small skirmish into the gravel, but no, he's right back on pace, he's keeping up with Matt Daly, and more importantly, he might be able to close in as we head back onto the start-finish straight. Up towards Tosa we go in just a moment. 1.8 seconds is that margin. It builds up ever so slightly scruffy at the start of the lap there for Andrew Whitehead, but he keeps his cool. He keeps in the mix of things. We've been on this camera now inside Andrew Whitehead's car for most of this race, but it's a good camera angle to be watching this battle from as we head up towards Variante Alta, first Acqua Minerale, as we head towards the mid-phase of this lap and of this race as well. Might not be the highest numbers that we've seen, but still has plenty of action to talk about. All there as Matt Daly just about keeps a hold of it on the exit of Acqua Minerale. Very nearly had lost his grasp on this championship at that point there. Kept the nose clean though, kept the car pointing in a straight line out of Acqua Minerale and hasn't lost any time in comparison to Andrew Whitehead. So no complaints there for the driver in the yellow liveried car. Down in towards Ravata once more. Late on the brakes on the outside there. Just misses the apex. Bit of a lock-up. See, I missed that apex as well. It just goes to show that only the finest drivers do that. And that is just a skill level that Matt Daly is starting to unlock that I perhaps can offer him. So, Matt, if you need some advice, let me know. I'd say that all in jest, of course. A much finer racing driver than myself, as is proven by many of our summer fun series or our winter series. That has been proven many a time. As we head back through Tamburello once more, 14 minutes left on the clock. 2 seconds is the gap between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. Looking back towards Steve Knight having issues in this race early on, of course, but showing resilience, getting the car mended, get back out on track, knowing that he can take away some really strong points in this series if he just keeps the nose clean and gets the car towards the end of the race. So great to see Steve still jumping in. He's not actually a lap down yet, so it hasn't lost all that much already, considering he had a crash and then went into the pits, then repaired the car and then came back out. Hasn't actually still fallen a lap behind just yet. We are just crossing the halfway marker in this race in a few moments' time, and Matt Daly still leading by 1.6 seconds. Here we see Andrew Whitehead closing up substantially now as we head through Acqua Minerale. 0.5 of a second separate these two drivers. As we run into this final part of the lap, this could be the battle that makes or breaks the championship when you think about it. We're in the late phases now. After this round, it will be the penultimate round of the season. And we're effectively null in the championship. There's no difference really in the points. Only 3 points separate these two, so this position will really make that difference. And if it stays so close towards the end of the running, this overtake could make that difference. So Matt Daly wanting to defend this as we head towards Ravata. Gaining through the braking zone into that first Ravata, though. We see Andrew Whitehead closing up. Gets back on the throttle through that second Ravata and gets ready to close up on the start-finish straight. There is Steve Knight up in front. There is the fine Alfa Romeo 75 racing car that we saw in qualifying. And we run up towards Tamburello once more. Matt Daly, I said there might be some difference between these two cars in terms of straight line speed. I might might roll back on that now. I think it just came down to particularly strong exits with plenty of grip in the tyres. Of course, that grip now waning somewhat, given that we are so far into this first race of the evening. 6 tenths of a second now was the margin between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. Nails the first curve there, goes over the second with ease, and absolutely perfectly executes the corner exit as we head up into Tosa. But Andrew Whitehead, on a charge, has been relentless in this race. My commendation must go to him. These two have led a very fine race indeed, putting immense pressure on each other, both driving at 105% really. I mean, Matt Daly gunning it in order to make sure that he keeps Andrew Whitehead behind for the championship. Andrew Whitehead trying to put that pressure on, both having very small slip-ups here or there, but nothing actually major to report on really. And they've kept that pressure on and haven't really cracked as we head up towards Variante Alta once more. 6 tenths of a second separate these two drivers as we head through the first part of the Alta. The second part comes very quickly indeed, and we see Matt Daly continuing on in the lead of this race. Just up in front is Steve Knight. They're probably going to meet each other on the start-finish straight, or maybe towards, maybe on the exit of Tamburello actually, so pretty ideal spacing, it must be said. Should be no major difficulties on a track which does get narrow at certain parts, but these are fairly narrow cars, and for the rest of it, you know, obviously it opens up on the legs of start-finish straight, comparative to, say, like a sprint course or something like that you might be used to seeing in the UK. Half a second now separate Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. No green sectors at this phase of the race, perhaps unsurprisingly, as the fuel load is getting lighter, but the tyres are pretty well worn in at this point as we head through the first part of Tamburello once more. Bit of rotation on the back end of both of those cars by the looks of things, particularly though for Andrew Whitehead, who loses a decent amount of time there on the exit, or rather on the run through Tamburello. 1.9 seconds is now the margin between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. That has built all the way back up to what it was early on in this race, even after Andrew Whitehead dropped off a little bit. It now stands at around about 2 seconds. Here we go, the gap staying consistent then at the moment. Some lapped traffic to contend with, and now, but well, it's not lapped yet, but blue flags are being deployed on the digi-flags around the track. There are no blue flags though in the AROC racing leagues. There are no concrete rules that say you must allow the other cars to overtake, but it's usually fairly common courtesy. We tend to see our drivers are all very friendly, all very amicable with each other, so it means that you do tend to see cars getting their way past with relative ease, with some assistance from the car out in front, because everyone is very friendly, as I say. So why not join? Certainly do get involved. I promise I won't ruin qualifying for everyone every round. So yeah, do get involved in some racing action there. We see Steve Knight very considerately, there we go, I was trying to think of an objective then, it couldn't quite come to me. Considerately getting out of the way there for Matt Daly, now using Matt Daly as a bit of a slingshot to benefit his speed down the start-finish straight. He's actually right there with Matt Daly as we head into Tamburello. First part of Tamburello done, second part to negotiate still, but it looks to be that Matt Daly's clear of Steve Knight, and is probably actually going to be quite pleased that Steve Knight is there, because he can potentially use Steve Knight as a bit of a barrier to Andrew Whitehead. Can use Steve Knight to make sure that Andrew Whitehead can't gain enough time. The back end on these cars really giving in now. We saw Matt Daly gliding through, makes it through, but Steve Knight is not able to do that. Finds himself on the outside of the circuit, in the gravel, in the wall. What a shame for Steve Knight. As I say, though, demonstrates some real resilience. You can see him there getting that car turned around. He will carry on and bring home some points. Well, a podium as well. He might be a lap down, but technically a podium. Here we see, though, Andrew Whitehead gaining substantial time on the end of this lap. The fight just, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, this. It seems to die off, and then all of a sudden Andrew Whitehead closes up and makes sure that that fight could still continue on. We've still got over 5 minutes of this race to go, and less than a second now, or just over a second rather, separate these two drivers. Half a second was what Andrew Whitehead found on that previous lap, so nice bit of pushing on there for the red and white liveried car. Seven tenths as we head through Piratella into Acqua Minerale in just a moment. Looking closer, although Matt Daly nails the run through into the mid part of the lap and builds up that gap to around about 1 second once more. Bounding over the curbs then through a Variante Alta. All the drivers, it must be said, have absolutely nailed those two curbs there. We saw it a week ago in touring car action. We've seen it plenty of times in the likes of Formula 1 qualifying and in my own driving as well. So easy to take too much of those sausage curbs through Variante Alta and just find yourself losing control of the car as the tyres leave contact with the ground, and it all goes rather wrong as we jump back onto the start-finish straight. We can see the gap now stands at 1.3 seconds. Matt Daly leads Andrew Whitehead, leads Steve Knight as we start one of the final few laps of this race now. 3 minutes left on the clock as we head through Tamburello. Once more, the gap staying at 1.5 seconds as it has done for so long in this race. We may see something happen, though, in the final few laps between these two drivers. Through I'll try that again. I haven't even had any wine this evening. I know, terrible. Acqua Minerale we go. And there we see Matt Daly, Andrew Whitehead. 1.6 seconds is the margin between these two drivers, as it has been for so long in this race. In terms of their pace overall, it is Matt Daly who just edges out Andrew Whitehead. Apologies, no, it is not. Andrew Whitehead, the 145.1 is best lap of this race. Matt Daly, 145.4. 3/10 of a second separate them in terms of their overall pace, in terms of their best laps, that is. 8 tenths rather, currently out on track. On that previous lap, it was a 46.4 for Whitehead, a 46.6 for Matt Daly. As we see Andrew Whitehead really closing up now. 1.6 seconds is that margin once again as we head into Tamburello. And the gap still stays at 1 second. This could go either way. Either we're going to stay exactly as we are, or we're going to see a bit of side-by-side action, shall we say, towards the end of this race. Here we go, final few laps out. The clock who's about to hit 0. We are going to get 2 more laps of this race in. This won't be the penultimate lap. We now see these two drivers stand at half a second separated as we head into that first regatta. Wide on entry, kiss the apex, go wide as you dare again through the gravel. Andrew Whitehead always taking that car ever so slightly wider, playing it a bit riskier through every single run that we've seen from him so far. We head back onto that start-finish straight now. Matt Daly leads as he has for so long in this race. Started 3rd in this race, but absolutely nailed the launch, whereas Andrew Whitehead struggling on the launch. Now gets a bit of a run here, gets a slingshot with the slipstream, goes side by side into Tamburello. This could be the move that seals the championship. He has to back out of it though. Too wide into the corner goes Matt Daly. Andrew Whitehead nails the execution of that corner, goes through into the lead of this race. Matt Daly there trying to give his opponent room, I suspect. Perhaps gave him too much room to compromise his own running. And there we go. Matt Daly, after so long in this race, has relented. Pressure has formed a few cracks in the armour of Matt Daly there. Andrew Whitehead now leads this race, a move that he has been wanting to do for so long. It's taken 25 minutes, but he has done it. 6 cents per second is now the margin between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. We still have 2 laps to go in this race, though. This is the penultimate lap. What can Matt Daly do in response, though? We've seen, well, this was the gap pretty much when Andrew Whitehead found a way past Matt Daly. So do not imagine that it's going to be all over. And I think it is all over for Andrew Whitehead. Oh, my days. This is terrible for Andrew Whitehead. Heads to Rocca Minerale. I suspect went for a bit of a wide run there onto that left-hand side of the circuit where we can see the gravel. And probably went too deep. Thought I must correct. And maybe on that overcorrection, the back end has stepped out. And when he could have made the pivotal move there to steal his championship, it's now all up in the air once again. Because Matt Daly starts the penultimate lap of this race with 15 seconds to his nearest rival. What a bitter disappointment there for Andrew Whitehead. Waited so long to get the move done. Gets the move done, and a few corners later, everything he's worked so hard for in this race is completely unravelled. What a few laps in this race. Either way, we stay on board with Andrew Whitehead, who... Oh, Matt Daly's in the pits. Why is Matt Daly in the pits now? What is going on in this race? I am bewildered. Has Matt Daly had some type of issue, which means he's had to retire from the set? No, he's back out on track, so he is continuing on. Did he have a penalty? I don't think he had any form of penalty to serve. I'm really not sure as to what could have caused this one. Either way, he dives into the pits, takes a soft tyre. He can't close up 17 seconds in one lap. So I'm really confused as to why he might try and do this. Is he just trying to, I don't know, bring a bit more of a fight to the championship late on? I'm not quite sure. Either way, Andrew Whitehead, just as I was saying about how disappointed he was and how all of his hopes were dashed in race 1, now leads this race by 16 seconds all of a sudden. What is going on? Okay, Andrew Whitehead leads Matt Daly. 16 seconds is that gap. Matt Daly leads from Steve Knight. The clock has hit 0. We're on the final lap of this race. We are just going to, hopefully now, have no more crazy goings on. And we're just going to see Andrew Whitehead bring home his car to bring an end to race 1. And there we go, Andrew Whitehead crossing the line there to take the checkered flag in this race. 15 seconds ahead of his rival in the end, but it's certainly not quite the story that you would expect to build up that margin. Andrew Whitehead brings it home with a victory, so does expand that championship lead that he now holds. It's looking better for him. Matt Daly's classified P2 in the end with a pit lane finish, and then Steve Knight will be classified P3 as he rounds Revatta for one last time in this race. Congratulations there to Andrew Whitehead. Put pressure on Matt Daly for so long, eventually found a way past completely cleanly. That was, you know, there no shenanigans there. But then it all kind of unfolded after that. Either way, I mean, both drivers at the front would have thoroughly deserved to have won that race. I think there. Andrew Whitehead wins this time, but I'm sure there's going to be more questions to be answered coming up in just a few moments in race 2. Our reverse grid race comes up next. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, back in the action, ready for race 2. Now, our reverse grid race. Just over 30 seconds now until lights out. And we are on the grid here at Imola. Once more, the order changes, of course, for our reverse grid race. It's going to be Matt Daly. Sorry, no, it's going to be Steve Knight, Matt Daly, and Andrew Whitehead, our order for race 2. 15 seconds now until lights out. Of course, we saw that very odd end to the race in race 1. Let's see if we can have a bit more of a consistent race this time in race 2. Interesting to see that Andrew Whitehead and Steve Knight opting for the hard tyre. Either way, We have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 2 here at Imola. A slow start for Steve Knight, but an electric start for Andrew Whitehead, who makes amends for the race 1 start, closes up to Matt Daly, and now we see that battle between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead continuing on as we saw it in race 1. We're on board with Steve Knight at the moment, who is still, I mean, I say it was a slow start. It wasn't that slow, really. It was just that the other two had such an immense start as we head further into the first lap of this race. Now, Matt Daly leads by 2/10 ahead of Andrew Whitehead. Now, this is going to be an interesting one in terms of tyre strategy, because clearly, especially after the likes of what we saw with Matt Daly having a bit of rough for everyone there, I think, at some point. Medium tyre, not quite got the longevity to make it towards the end of the race here at Imola. And that has caused Andrew Whitehead and Steve to jump on the hards. Matt has stayed on the mediums. Feeling that he can just nurse the tyre a bit better in this race, he's opted to go for that softer compounded tyre and enjoy peak grip at the start of the race. That means at this phase of the race, he should be able to walk away a little bit and just build up a gap and continue on. But for Andrew Whitehead, he's going to have the hard tyres. He's going to struggle more at the very start of this race. We saw we're coming up to sector 3 now, so where Andrew was particularly strong at the start of race 1. He's going to struggle at the start of the race, is Andrew Whitehead, but as we head later on into the running, when Matt Daly might be thinking about backing off a little bit more to save the tyres, or might be struggling with lack of grip, Andrew Whitehead should still have plenty of car underneath him to continue to challenge Matt Daly. So we'll see what comes of this strategy that these drivers have chosen as we head on to the start-finish straight once more. Less than a second separating Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead onto the start-finish straight now. Then let's see if that gap does close up. Of course, Andrew Whitehead benefiting from a bit of a slipstream effect. There we go, Andrew purple through sector 3 once more. He really enjoys the final sector of this lap. He doesn't close up this time out, importantly. He loses about a 10th as we head into Tamburello, and that builds as we run through the corner. Here we go then, the gap staying pretty much consistent at this phase of the race. This is what we saw for 22 minutes out of the 25 in race 1, but eventually chaos ensued. Let's have a look then at the championship as it stands. That first race, of course, it didn't look like it was going to be this way, but actually it's Andrew Whitehead who builds his championship lead. It's now 365 points to Matt Daly's 350. Then we have Willie Gliss, 247. Alan Matthews, 199. Jack Hodson, 173. Paul Millman, 163. Andrew Brammer, 122. Steve Knight, 78. And Guy Swarbrick on 10. So that means that Steve Knight is going to get closer and closer to Andrew Brammer if Steve Knight continues with this strong attendance form of all the rounds over this season. He will likely usurp the likes of Andrew Brammer in this series. 1 second is the margin between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead. Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead battling out for our championship here in round 10 rather of the Formula Alpha Championship for 2025. Rounds coming up next will be Monaco and Barcelona. Next week we'll be at Monaco in the touring cars, of course, before a fortnight's time when we're at Monaco in these Formula Alpha machines, and then we round out the season in the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, which is, well, it's quite a somber topic actually, because rumour has it, and I think there's plenty of momentum behind this now, that Catalunya's going away. And who would have thought, you know, a few years back, Catalunya was rather unloved as a circuit now, wasn't it? It was mainly because Sector 3 it kind of took away a lot of the racing fun that can be had. I think it's a fantastic racing venue. I really enjoy driving that track. I think it's a brilliant track to drive. But yeah, it wasn't a fan favourite in the likes of Formula 1. And then they made some brilliant revisions to it. They, you know, changed the profile of Turn 10 ever so slightly. Sector 3 got reprofiled. Well, they didn't get reprofiled. They just started using the wider layout through Sector 3 at Catalunya. And I thought it improved the racing. And now we're getting rid of it, apparently. So we'll enjoy it in the Formula Alpha running instead. 1.7 seconds make that 1.9 is the gap between Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead at this point. Big spin there for Matt Daly, who finds himself now in P2 on the run up towards Tosa. Andrew Whitehead now leads this race by 4 seconds, and this is going to make things very interesting for us. We've still got 17 minutes to go in this race. All is very much not said and done at this point. 4 seconds being that margin. Andrew Whitehead now has the hard tyres, so we might start to see him gain that mechanical grip. That mechanical grip advantage. And with 17 minutes to go, it's not insurmountable that if Matt Daly is still quick enough, he will be able to close up the gap to Andrew Whitehead. We are going to have a fight for this race lead now, folks. And this just continues on the brilliant form that we saw from Andrew Whitehead for so much of this season. He took pole in Losail, for example. He took plenty of race wins. Yeah, I don't believe he's actually had a double race win weekend in the Formula Alpha running. He hasn't at this point, so it'd be great to see if he can pull that off for this round, at least, to be his first double race win of the season. So that'd be almighty stuff from Alan and Andrew Matthews. Andrew Whitehead, if he is able to pull that off. 16 minutes is left on the clock, and the gap stands at 3.3 seconds. Matt Daly really on a charge then, despite the issues earlier on in his lap. He's closing up that gap, stood at 4 seconds, now it stands at 3. We are going to be on for a fight in this race. Just for an idea there, on that Sector 3, Andrew Whitehead, 38.5, Matt Daly at 37.9. Those mediums might have potentially been a part of the equation that caused him to go off there, but he is showing no signs of slowing down, is Matt Daly. He has not been upset by that off there that saw him losing position to Andrew Whitehead goes purple through Sector 1 at 30.6 by a few tenths. That is purple by the way. He's absolutely flying along. The gap now stands at 2.9. We'll see how the middle sector is shaping up as he jumps on the brakes for Aqua Minerale. Runs up towards Variante Alta in just a moment. 2.6 seconds is now that gap. Matt Daly using those medium tyres to his advantage at this point in the race. It's another purple sector for Matt Daly, absolutely flying along. He might have been preserving tyres earlier on in the race to try and make sure those mediums can get towards the end. That's not his priority now. His priority is maximum pace. His priority is making sure that it's a yellow car that leads this running at the end of the day. Who cares if the tyres are low on grip towards the end of the stint? You need to be at the front end to be fighting for the race win at the end of the stint. He is closing up that gap. Now 2.3 seconds. Andrew Whitehead must be feeling that pressure. And we're going to be in for another fantastic battle between these two folks. On board with Matt Daly now, we can just hear the snarl of that 1.4 multi-air Formula Alfa powertrain, very familiar to you Mito and Giulietta owners out there. What a fantastic noise it does produce. It's quite a unique sound. I mean, it's most famous in its application in a bath, where it can only be described in one four-letter word. It doesn't begin with an S, it begins with an L, loud. And yeah, that's perhaps its most iconic use, shall we say, in terms of its noise. Everyone knows the sound of a cold starter bath. For some people, it's ingrained in their heads. Particularly owners of a Mito with a Hornet back box, you'll also be fairly familiar with it then. But Matt Daly, yeah, fantastic car coming from sound coming from his car there. They're a pretty good sounding engine, all things considered. You know, owners of Mitos and Giuliettas will know that you do get a nice noise out of them, particularly the turbocharged models with a bit of intake noises coming through there as well. But Matt Daly's will certainly be making that in the moment, because just look at how much he's closing down that gap. Now 1.7 seconds it stands at as we head into the first Ravazza. Brake disc glowing there with heat as he's really wringing everything out of this car now as we cross the halfway mark in this race. Great nose cam shot now of Matt Daly's car as we head through towards Tosa in just a moment. 1.6 seconds is that margin. You can just see how alive the car looks as it heads through Tamburello. Probably not what the driver wants, actually. These are short wheelbase cars, so they're less stable, but the car, as it goes over the curbs in particular, looks like it's just a little bit unsettled. Like he's really, I mean, this probably comes from just how much he's pushing that car on at this point, but also a lot of it probably comes from, yeah, the tyres not offering that grip anymore. Matt Daly, though, is in maximum attack mode at the moment. You can just tell he is giving it absolutely everything. I think, unfortunately, the tyre disadvantage is now starting to creep in for him at just about the worst time, really, in order for him to try and push on and take back the race lead in this race. He'll be might not be thinking about it right now. It's pretty rare, I think, unless it's the likes of Max Verstappen at, say, Abu Dhabi in 2021. It's pretty rare that you immediately begin to think about the championship at this kind of race weekend, really. He won't be fully aware of the full intricacies of the championship. He very well could be, to be fair, with Matt Daly. But it might not occur to him in the car right now that currently Andrew Whitehead is building up a gap in the championship, and as it stands, it is set to increase ever more. Then again, he could well be, and this might be why he's fighting on quite so much. That gap stands at 1.5 seconds as we jump back onto that start-finish straight with just over 10 minutes in this race to go. Just look at how much closer these two drivers now look as we head through Tosa. Less than a second is the gap between the two as we run up the hill towards Piratella in just a moment. We're going to see Matt Day continuing to pile on that pressure. Steve Knight assured has had a quiet race, really, has had no major issues, isn't a lap down, is still on the lead lap of the race, and is cruising home at the moment to a nice podium finish here in race 2, which will be thoroughly deserved as he looks to improve his standings in the championship. Just look how much closer, though, Matt Daly is getting as we run through Acqua Minerale. In the slipstream towards Variante Alta we go. Getting oh so close now is Matt Daly. Could he try and move into Alta? No, I don't think he will. That would be rather brave. He thinks better of it. Gets a purple through the middle sector. The back end kicks out on the exit of Alta, though. He does continue on. Hasn't lost too much time despite that oversteer. And is going to pile on the pressure now as we head through to Ravata. We go side by side. We make contact, trading paint, bashing wheels. It's like touring cars out here as we head through into that first Ravata. The second coming up in just a moment. Half a second is the gap between the two drivers as we jump back onto that start-finish straight. The next big move could be towards Tamburello, as we saw with Andrew Whitehead versus Matt Daly a race ago. The tables have very much turned in this second race of the evening, and now we might see Matt Daly piling that pressure on Andrew Whitehead as we head into Tamburello. No major moves to be made just yet, but I think we might be seeing a few more as we head further into this lap. Run up through Tosa now. It is such a brave game to be playing here at Imola. You have to do it in order to get those really fast laps in, though. But this is the traditional circuit. Once the tarmac ends, gravel starts. And you can see the drivers there as they run up onto the curb, trying to carry as much speed through the bends as possible. After that curb, there's a drop-off and it's into gravel. You don't want to go further than the concrete curbs because it will punish you severely for doing so. Another circuit actually is Imola that is dropping off the Formula 1 calendar, which is a terrible shame, I think, because it is a truly old-school punishing circuit, which these drivers have certainly found out. As we head down into Variante Alta once more, 3/10 is the gap, and executed perfectly by both cars is Variante Alta. Not wanting to go into that gravel, they continue on towards Ravata once more, and it looks that Matt Daly is going to be even closer this time around. 3/10 make that 2/10 as we head towards Ravata. He has a look down the inside, thinks better of it though, holds back and just focuses on nailing the execution of the two Ravatas, carries as much momentum as possible to give him the best shot at going for an overtake onto the start-finish straight. Oh, spin there for Matt Daly, a disaster as we head on to the exit of Piratella. I think those medium tyres on the back really starting to give up now as we run through Acqua Minerale there. Matt Daly, unfortunately, doesn't have a response to Andrew Whitehead's hard tyres, which should allow him to cruise on home now. Matt Daly, I mean, he can try and push on. The issue is, the more he pushes, the more he's going to fall into issues like that, where we see the back end just giving up on the exit of Piratella. A disaster for Matt Daly there. Looks to be he's pretty settled in P2 at this point now. And it looks as though Matt Daly has had further issues out on track by the looks of things through Tamburello. At least the indicator there flashes red, which tells you that usually drivers falling out of track limits and it could be a potential issue. Looks to be that Matt has had an issue on the exit at Tamburello there. I think he's just nursing this car home at this point because that gap expands now to around about 14 seconds. Bit of an off there for Andrew Whitehead, who is able to continue on, but that was interestingly at Piratella, exactly where Matt Daly had those issues. So it goes to show he's certainly still vulnerable. It is Andrew Whitehead. It's a 15-second gap, but that can be closed up in 5 minutes in this race, particularly if we have a couple more issues out in front. Big off there for Matt Daly. He does catch it, luckily, as we run through Acqua Minerale. But he was able to sort that out. It could have been even worse, really, in this race. He has not been able to build up. I think he was going into this race hoping, as we run through Variante Alta and into the gravel there, and we spin round. What flourish there from Matt Daly, thank you. But as I was saying, I think what's happened there is he went onto the mediums with the mindset of he just about started to drop off towards the end of race one. In race two, maybe if he was able to look after them a little bit more, he might have been in a better position to make sure he can get those mediums to the end. Unfortunately, with that earlier instance, he had to push with all of his might, more so than he did in race 1, in order for a chance to take P1 in this race. He hasn't lost out anything when you think about it. He was P2 anyway, and if he didn't push, he was going to stay P2. He's pushed, tried to get past Andrew Whitehead, ended up dropping back as a result of his pushing. But you've got to try. You've got to make that opportunity come towards you at least. So I commend him for trying and push on and try and get past Andrew Whitehead, actually. Fortunately, it didn't quite work out that way, as we now see that Andrew Whitehead is now on the penultimate lap of this race. As we now see Andrew Whitehead starting the final lap of this race with very little in the way of challenge. Not what we saw in race 1 at all, really. And not what we saw at the start of this race as well. But Andrew Whitehead just kept the nose clean. Not really made any mistakes at all. Has not cracked at any point, I'd say, in race 2. Apart from, again, it's Imola. It's going to throw up little mistakes here or there. But Andrew Whitehead looking cool, calm and composed as we head down towards the end of this second race of the evening. Andrew Whitehead currently heading up through Piratella at the moment. Well, there we go. Here's Andrew Whitehead heading into Variante Alta now, and this is going to be a remarkable weekend for his championship hopes. His first double race win of the season, when it really mattered most, arguably. It's a crucial turning point in the championship, I would say. Very little points between them at the start of this race weekend. Now a decent gap begins to emerge between the two drivers, and Andrew Whitehead delivers that chance to try and take the crown this season. It is going to be a double race victory here at Imola for Andrew Whitehead. What a celebration, what a cause for celebration there for the red and white liveried car. Andrew Whitehead takes the checkered flag here at Imola. Congratulations, Andrew. It's race 2 victory there, and a further improved championship hopes for Andrew. Coming up next, it will be Matt Daly, who heads through Alta there at the moment. There is Steve Knight. He's a lap down, but will still be classified, of course, and will still be finishing, of course, on the podium as well. So decent points to be taken all round for Steve there as he jumps up through the order. But first, coming across line, it will be Matt Daly. Heads through the two Ravazzas. At the end of the day, it will be disappointment here at Imola, but still 2 P2s, so still plenty of points. It just makes that championship a little bit harder. Matt Daly then heads down the start-finish straight, and he will take the checkered flag. It comes home in P2, and then rounding out that podium, it is Steve Knight coming home in P3. That brings an end to our running for this evening. Hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I enjoy commentating here at Imola. Imola, a fantastic venue. Certainly hope we get some more races at it. Thank you very much for watching this evening, and a good night. And I will try to avoid driving in qualifying in future. Thank you very much for watching, and a good night.